more aligned to the formal system as it is today. Thanks to GST and so many other initiatives, there is total confidence among trader fraternity in our Modi Sarkar. Another thing, madam, congratulations to our income tax department for expediting and processing the returns from an average of 93 days in 2013-14 to 16 days at present, with a commitment to do it even faster. And believe 45% of those returns were processed within 24 hours. Commend that, ma'am. Just one request is, there are some old cases pending at circles, and if there is a timeline, given for a closure for that, it would be nice. It will relieve the small trader who depends on the consultant, and also it will free his mind to concentrate on his work. That's a request if there's a timeline. These are a few big things. I also take this opportunity to thank our Modi Sarkar for recognizing traders as an important cog in the wheel of our ecosystem and presenting us various opportunities to present our case. We have always been well received. This government is inclusive and responsive. We remember in 2014, Devendra ji helped us in the LBT thing. Thank you, sir. And of course, since then, we don't have the burden of octroi. And thanks again to the Modi Sarkar. And more recently, when the GST was rolled in, Maharashtra traders have extended fully. We met Jetli ji at that time. And Mangal ji is here. He has always been interacting with our traders. So we thank Modi Sarkar for the recognition to the traders. Namaskar and thank you. Vande Bharat.
Next speaker is Mr. Surendra Mehta, National Secretary of Indian Bullion Jewelers Association.
First of all, congratulations, madam, and thank you for giving us the robust and growth-oriented budget. My question is in respect of
traders. So we thank Modi Sarkar for the recognition to the traders. Namaskar and thank you. Vande Bharat.
Next speaker is Mr. Surendra Mehta, National Secretary of Indian Bullion Jewelers Association.
First of all, congratulations, madam, and thank you for giving us the robust and growth-oriented budget. My question is in respect of electronic gold receipt. First, thank you for giving a clarity on capital gains in respect of conversion of physical gold into the electronic gold receipt. But however, when the physical gold gets converted into an electronic gold receipt by a GST registered dealer, the procedure for credit of GST has not been announced yet. And this has led to non-starter of domestic spot exchange, which was also announced in your budget. Thank you.
Sanjay, anything that you want to say on this specific thing?
Ma'am, two things. One, the previous request that came that regarding, the traders reducing, the taxation rate in line with that for corporate at 22%. So that I would like to point out, that there is a difference because for companies, there is a double taxation. So with respect to firms, there is taxation only at one place. So let's not try to compare the two. Nevertheless, we have in this budget, the FM has announced that the limit for presumptive taxation for small enterprises, including traders, will increase, from 2 crore to 3 crore. So that is an additional benefit that will be given. Litigation, there are a number of the government and the Honorable Finance Minister herself personally is aware, of the pendency, large pendency of cases. Number of steps have been announced in the budget and we'll continue to work. The chairman CBDT only yesterday has announced that he will be taking measures for cases relating to TDS pending in, the commissioner appeal level relating to TDS defaults. So that is another thing which we are doing, and we'll come up with other measures so that we are able to reduce the pendency. GST thing, credit for GST on conversion gold to a certificate. That part is also, we are aware of that, and we will be taking action to smoothen the process. Thank you.
I'd like to draw attention of Mr. Milind Kamble. He raised some important issues about MSMEs. Sir, I would like to bring to your notice a very important announcement which this budget has, implementation with a firm commitment to start the implementation from 1st April through further infusion into the Guarantee Trust Fund that will lead to an additional credit potential of about 2 lakh crore. Currently, the credit for MSMEs is of the order of about 1.7 lakh crore. That more than doubling that the potential is a huge credit can go. Along with that, the guarantee fee which was being loaded onto the MSMEs, the trust will pick up that burden. As a result, the effective interest rate can go down by almost a percentage point. So these will be a two major impact for availability of the credit. Thank you very much.
Anantanageshwaran, economic survey has been referred to by at least 2 or 3 of them. Anything for you to add?
Ma'am, specifically on the MSME, I think one of the things the budget has, which is probably not well appreciated, is the fact that suppliers would have to receive payments before buyers can actually claim tax deduction against that expenditure that they owe to the MSME suppliers. I think this is a very transformative step that has been taken. Because the survey also points out that the health of the MSME sectors during the pandemic years and further have actually held up, thankfully, far better than we would have feared at the beginning of the pandemic, which is evident in the amount of GST that new MSME tax assessees are paying. In fact, if you look at the GST data, 20% of the new GST taxpayers, 20% of them are roughly new assessees. The average GST they pay is around 1.1 lakh of rupees per annum, whereas the migrated taxpayers into GST from the old system, they pay on average 4 lakhs per annum in terms of GST taxes. So it shows very clearly that the bulk of the new taxpayers in the GST system are micro and small enterprises. So in that sense, the formalization of the micro small enterprises, which gives them market access as well as financial inclusion, has been happening quite well and quite briskly in the last few years. I just wanted to highlight these points. Thank you, ma'am.
I wanted to ask a question of Mr. Nandakumar. Mr. Nandakumar had suggested that the date should go beyond the
base itself.
Yeah. You had mentioned that it should cover the Ukraine war period as well. But do you have any specific justification for why supply would have been disrupted by the Ukraine war, as opposed to the lockdowns and the other physical disruptions which happened in COVID, number one? Number two, obviously, if it's extended to a date beyond the budget, you will actually give an incentive to people to default prospectively, knowing that the default will be forgiven. So that is obviously not correct. But even in retrospect, why would Ukraine war have an effect on MSME supply? Can you be a bit specific?
Yes. Most of the electronic components, because every process, everything electronics controlled. These SBU, the chips which are coming from overseas, they were all much delayed. Then what happened is, prior to the Ukraine war, most of the sea containers were also blocked out. So there was no availability of these containers to get the material into the country or to export also.
But that was all before 2022. During the last 9 months, what is it that has happened?
Most of the containers, ship containers were locked there. So that was a problem, is primarily because of the electronic chips not available. And that plus also raw materials, special raw materials for high end of the stainless steel, etc.
Anyway, we'll check the facts.
I will get back to you, sir. Thank you, with all the information.
Now I invite Ms. Pinky Mehta, CFO of Aditya Birla Capital Limited, representing Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Thank you. Madam, I would like to raise the 2 questions. One, regarding the life insurance related, where the maturity amount will be taxable as an income from other sources, where the premium will exceed 5 lakhs per annum, where the request is to increase the limit from proposed 5 lakhs to 10 lakhs and allow the indexations or a capital gain method, because these are the long-term policies. And for the purpose of calculations of the limit, GST amount should not be considered. and the specific exclusions for the premium from term policy, health policy, pension policy should be excluded while calculating this amount. The second question is that it should be clarified that the disallowance of GST credit on CSR expenditure should be made prospective and it should not be made retrospective. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Umesh Grover, Secretary General of Container Freight Stations Association of India.
Good afternoon, ma'am. The budget is highly focused on exports, and we congratulate you on that. This will reduce dependency on imports, create jobs, and madam, the PLI scheme has been extended. That's another wonderful thing. Just for the logistics of these exports, a lot of warehouses, multimodal logistics parks, ICDs, container freight stations, air freight stations will be required. They will facilitate these exports. However, since they come in the service sector, they are not entitled for PLI. So our request and suggestion is if they could be considered for on the PLI. And since, creation of these new infra also is highly capital incentive, it takes 2 to 3 years, it creates a lot of employment, and they will facilitate that the exports, what is manufactured, they will ensure that these exports find their way all over the world. Thank you, madam.
Next speaker is Ms. Ujjwala Singhania, Co-Chair of FICCI Maharashtra State Council.
A very good afternoon, Honorable Minister. I today speak on behalf of women. I'm also the immediate past president of FICCI Ladies Organization. Thank you for the progressive budget. And it was a very welcome announcement of the new savings scheme, Mahila Sangam, Samman Savings Certificate for Women. I would also like to suggest there is a lot more that one can do for women. And it was a great move last year for women reservation in boards, defense, politics. I feel we should continue this, but we need to have larger numbers at the top position. For the mid-level, I think the ease of doing businesses, whether it's a small scale or a startup, by giving them more incentives, setting up industrial parks in all different states is very important, which is totally owned by women. Financial aids, etc. At rural level, job creation by skilling, and I feel I feel it is very important that they are given digital literacy and also a huge loan and how to set up their businesses. I think to end it, I just would like to see the numbers are very important to make an impact. Thank you.
Next speaker, Mr. Jayant L. Lapsia, President of All India Liquid Bulk Importers and Exporters Association.
Namaskaram, madam. To compliment you on the budget is an understatement, because from the day you presented the first budget 5 years back, it has been a rollicking budget all along, and there has been a consistency in growth. So I'm not going to talk on figures. I represent the liquid bulk sector, which contributes significantly to the customs revenue in the country. One of the significant highlights of this budget, as Mahaperival said, Devatin Korul, besides the figures of fiscal deficit and other things, and various path-breaking initiatives we had introduced, madam, it was music to our ears when you said, Vivad se Samadhan tak. This was only introduced recently in Mumbai Customs by the Principal Commissioner, Sri Agarwal. That was Samad se Samadhan tak. But we were delighted when you spoke of Vivad se Samadhan tak. And our humble request would be to just ensure that it reaches even the investigative departments so that the litigation comes down and the business, ease of doing business, and also transparency in the governance takes good position and place, and the trade has good confidence in the government. Once again, complimenting you for presenting the 5th budget in succession, and that too, brilliant budget. Thank you, madam.
Mr. Sunil Sanghai, CEO of Nova One Capital Limited and Chairman FICCI Capital Market Committee.
Thank you. Honorable Minister, next day of the budget, one of the newspaper carried an editorial and headline summarized it very well. This is probably the best budget from 2014. So my compliments to you for that. And we all agree with that. You and your team is not only known for a good budget, progressive budget, but also a very focused execution of this. So my request to you would be if you can elaborate on the execution part of this in this year as well, because that's very, very important, particularly the current year is a difficult year. Since it's a revenue department program, I have one question related to revenue, which is finance bill. Angel tax, when it was implemented last year, the Indian funds which are registered with SEBI, they were exempt. This time, there is no similar provision for the foreign funds. Ma'am, what happens for sometimes a premium is paid over the fair value because of the control and other aspects. There is a FEMA guideline also which requires a minimum level of fair value and it can be paid beyond that. In that case, company paying tax may not be appropriate. So I'm sure the thinking must be something else if there's a clarification on that. Thank you very much.
Two things. One is, this 5 lakh limit on life insurance. So does it cover the premium paid for other policies, medical, etc.? So, well, certainly it does not. As to whether it covers the GST, includes the GST portion also or not, we will clarify that. As to whether it does or not, we will clarify because the word used is premium. So it should not include the GST part, but we will clarify that through a circular. The other thing is related to angel tax. The only difference that we have brought in is with regard to its applicability to non-residents. Now we are aware, as you have mentioned, that there is, other than startups, first of all, for startups, it is not applicable. So that doubt has already been cleared. But there can be cases of other than startups, and we have, as I mentioned, we have just brought them at par with residents. But there is an issue, as has been mentioned, with respect to FEMA, because over there one cannot, sell or buy, the shares at beyond a particular value, whereas, for our purpose, for the angel tax, it's the other way around. So we need to work with that so that there are no inconsistencies with respect to the FEMA. So we'll work on that.
There was a question on the execution of the budget. So I'll just make 2 points. One, some of them relate to policy aspects such as regulatory reviews and many other aspects. They will obviously take the time which they have to take, but they will be initiated very soon. As regards the specific actions which are to be taken by the government, action is already underway. The planning for the enhanced central capital expenditure is already underway, and all the concerned ministries will be ready to spend it from April 1st when the new financial year commences. As regards the state capital expenditure, the enhanced provision of 1,30,000 crores, the guidelines have already been issued day before yesterday. So the states have been made aware of the amounts which each state is entitled to and the different windows under which that amount can be claimed. So it has already been communicated, and we are expecting the state governments to send their first batch of requests even before March 31st, so that it can be released as soon as the financial year begins. As regards 2 of the Vivad Se Vishwas schemes, one for the refund of 95% of forfeited amounts, and the other regarding the standardized scheme for settlement of arbitral disputes. On the first one, the guidelines are expected to be issued next week. It will include a system by which the MSMEs will apply through the GEM portal. That will take a little more time, but it will be operational very soon. The guidelines will be issued most probably in the coming week. The draft scheme for the second scheme, which is the arbitral awards, is also likely to be published next week. We are deliberately publishing it as a draft so that we can solicit the comments from industry on the scheme and take them into account before the scheme is finalized. That also we expect to operationalize in the new financial year. And similarly, the budgets of the different departments for different schemes, they are aware of their budgets, they are already making the plans, and our instructions from the Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable Finance Minister are that it is our job to see that as far as possible, expenditure is front-loaded into the first half of the next financial year, and we are taking all possible steps to do that, and every ministry is already on the job, and the Niti Aayog is coordinating this effort to see that expenditure is front-loaded into the first half. Thank you.
Mr. Gumanmal Jain, CFO of Hexagon Nutrition, representing ASSOCHAM.
First of all, I would like to congratulate to the government for the holistic budget covering all the societies and industry of the India, and looking to for the 2030 growth story of the India. One sector, the PM Modi last year announced that we will try to recover try to rise fortification, and the nutraceutical industries is not covered in the budget. So some PLI or some product link incentive or some capex incentive should be announced to the in the budget, so that the nutraceutical industry can encourage the industry and recover the malnourishment in the children up to 20 years. And the second is the ATC is not covered in the new tax regime, so most of the people, especially lower middle class, will not encourage to invest in the LIC or etc. So fund may be shortage, or government may not receive the funds for the low cost funds from the middle class. So how it may cost increase to the government. Thank you.
Next speaker is Mr. Sudhir Kapadia.
Ma'am, 1 minute.
Yes.
So just a response to this, I would like to make one clarification here. Actually, the small savings schemes which are meant for the middle class, such as the senior citizen savings scheme, the MIS, these are not low-cost funds to the government. They're actually high-cost funds for the government. Actually, the rate of interest the government pays on small savings is somewhere between 0.5% and 1% higher than our cost of market borrowing in the markets. The government is consciously giving this rate of interest to benefit those sections of society. So it is not from the cost angle that, so I'm just making that one submission to you. Second, as regards the incentive for different kinds of savings, at present it's a very complex system. You get so much for this, so much for that. The approach as outlined by the finance minister in one of her discussions recently is that we are going to leave this to the citizen to choose which savings instrument is optimal for the citizen. And there is absolutely no disincentive to anyone to save. And this is not expected to have any adverse effect on savings. It is not as though people save only because there is a tax benefit. In many cases, they take the benefit because there is already a saving. It can be both ways. So this is a neutral effect as far as we have assessed it.
Now next, Mr. Sudhir Kapadia from Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Thank you, ma'am. This is a specific question on Section 9, capital A. It has been brought in the statute book since 2015, but hasn't found many takers in terms of finding a way to bring offshore management of funds into India. This will directly benefit the city as well, but also the country. Our estimate is we will get about $1 billion on a yearly basis of income if these funds which invest in India are brought to be managed from Indian shores. There are 17 conditions which have been prescribed. 3 or 4 of them are absolutely impractical. And the suggestion was that if we can relook at those, it will really unleash this opportunity for the country. Thank you.
Next speaker, Mr. Shikhar Chand Jain, President of Hindustan Chamber of Commerce.
नमस्कार मैम, नमस्कार। आपके द्वारा दिया गया बजट बहुत ही सुंदर और सर्वजन हिताय और भारतीय हमारी अर्थव्यवस्था की प्रगति के लिए मील का पत्थर होगा, इसके लिए बहुत बहुत बधाई देना चाहता हूँ। मैं टेक्सटाइल ट्रेड और इंडस्ट्री से जुड़ा हुआ हूँ। हमारी समस्या कोविड काल में व्यापारियों के लिए, इंडस्ट्रीज के लिए आपने ब्याज का मोरेटोरियम दिया था, स्थगन दिया था, और जिससे बाद में बैंकों ने पैसा वसूल भी कर लिया ब्याज का। अब जब पूरा देश ही बंद था तो उस समय हमारा टर्नओवर तो घट जाना था या शून्य हो जाना था, और उस काल के लिए अब बैंक कहता है कि आपका टर्नओवर घट गया तो हम आपकी उतनी लिमिट कैसे रखें, हम आपकी लिमिट घटाएंगे। दूसरी बात, आपकी रेटिंग घट गई तो हम आपकी ब्याज बढ़ा देंगे। अब जब जिस समय हमें अपने व्यापार को, अपने इंडस्ट्रीज को सुदृढ़ करने की आवश्यकता है, उस समय बैंकों का ये व्यवहार तो हमें बिल्कुल अनुचित लगता है। मैं आपसे यह विनय से अनुरोध करता हूं कि इस समस्या का समाधान बताएं। धन्यवाद।
बैंकों के फंक्शनिंग के ऊपर आपके कमेंट है। सरकार में बैंकों के नियंत्रण करने वाले अधिकारी तो मेरे साथ नहीं आए क्योंकि उनके घर में कुछ पर्सनल नो वेट अ मिनट मुझे ये सुझाव चुप से पहले दिया, मैंने सुना भी, मगर उनको लगता है कि मैंने नहीं सुना। वो उनके मतलब इस तरफ और इस तरफ के सुझाव ये है कि बैंकों के वरिष्ठ अधिकारीगण इधर है, उनसे बात करवाइए। मगर शिकायत उनके आप ऊपर है, वो कैसे बात करेंगे? और नियंत्रण करने वाले इधर होना चाहिए, आपके सुनने वाले हम होना चाहिए, वो तो नहीं सुन रहे ना। सो मैं जानबूझ करके मेरे अपने भाषण दे रही हूं, मगर फिर भी उनसे दबाव देके नहीं उनसे बात करवाई। और सुझाव दूसरा भी है जो फाइनेंस सेक्रेटरी साहब ने बोल रहे हैं कि बैंकिंग का एडिशनल सेक्रेटरी इधर है, उनसे बात करवाई। वो सही सुझाव है, मगर वो एडिशनल सेक्रेटरी है। वो ये भी बोलेंगे कि साहब मैं तो सुन लिया, मेरे बॉस को कह दूं। इसलिए मैं आज आपके विषय में कोई जवाब नहीं दे रही हूं, मगर आपका कष्ट सुन लिया।
मैं इस बारे में छोटी सी बात कहना चाहता हूं कि जो बैंक अपने नियम के अनुसार पिछले 2 वर्ष के फाइनेंस देखती है, क्या वो पिछले 5 वर्ष के नहीं देख सकती? क्योंकि 2 वर्ष तो वैसे ही जीरो में चले गए। तो अगर पिछले 3 वर्ष अगर हो जाते हैं तो हमारी समस्या का समाधान हो जाता है। पर इस समय चूंकि हम टेक्सटाइल ट्रेड से जुड़े हुए और बहुत कठिन परिस्थिति से गुजर रहे हैं, ना हम एक्सपोर्ट में कर पाए, ना हम डोमेस्टिक में कर पाए, सारा कारोबार उसमें स्थगित था। इसलिए अगर सरकार की तरफ से कुछ भी समाधान मिले, सहायता मिले तो हम पर बड़ी।
इसीलिए मैं आज जवाब नहीं दे रही हूँ,
धन्यवाद।
मगर आपका सुन लिया।
धन्यवाद।
और एक और भी रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी, आप हो सकता है तो आपके ही केस को थोड़ा और विस्तार से लिखित रूप में मुझे भेजिए। देखते हैं चुपचाप बैठ करके इन सब से बात करके।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
I now invite Mr. Samir Soumya, IMC Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm speaking on behalf of Ms. Anand Singhania, who is the president and who was for a medical emergency. He couldn't come this morning. Ma'am, I want to compliment you on a fantastic budget. Ma'am, it was inclusive, comprehensive, and green, moving towards sustainability. And the breadth of talking about organic farming to digital agriculture infrastructure, coming on the heels of the ONDC or the UPI Aadhaar, is tremendous, including the libraries and the work of Karigar handicrafts. So compliments. I really think the vision you've articulated deserves great applause. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, we really appreciate that the budgetary regime over the last so many years that we've seen is leading to greater predictability, and we are moving towards a much more stable regime. Our requests or suggestions are, just like you have mentioned to him right now, if we have some comments or views on the amendments for the direct tax amendments that you have made, is there a way in which we could have a platform like you're doing today where we could address them so that there is a better way to communicate if we have some detailed suggestions?
Is there a what?
No, when you're making amendments in the direct tax regime or the indirect tax regime, a way in which we could, right now you're putting them with the finance bill. Is there a way in which we could communicate our suggestions with you in detail if we have comments on the various amendments made?
There's never been a stoppage. There's never been a hurdle. You're welcome to do it.
Okay, so then...
Then and now and in the future.
Okay.
Just feel free to write.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Next speaker, Mr. Khalid Khan, Vice President of Federation of Indian Export Organizations.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, ma'am. As the apex body of exports from India, we would like to congratulate you on this path-breaking budget, which not only gives a fillip to the domestic market, but also has an eye on the international arena. Ma'am, we have a couple of suggestions to make in this budget. First of all, it's drawing a roadmap for developing an Indian shipping line for global repute. Madam, Indian exporters have done reasonably well despite the headwinds in global trade. We expect to end the fiscal year with exports between 440 to 450 billion. In the 2021, India remitted US dollars 84 billion as transport freight charges to foreign shipping companies. As the import moves towards $1 trillion exports, the freight charges will go up to US dollars 125 to 150 billion. Since Shipping Corporation of India is being disinvested, we request you to encourage to develop an Indian shipping line for getting a share of about 25% of this business in the next 3 to 5 years. Little tweaking in tax rates will encourage ships to be registered in India and the Indian shipping lines. I will request you to kindly look into this issue to make it India Atmanirbhar in shipping sector. Ma'am, our second point is increase in subventions for MSMEs. The budget has increased the outlay of interest equalization scheme by 23%. Since the global trade is slowing down, there is a scope to provide deeper subvention under the scheme to make our exports further competitive.
Just hold on there. I'm not against giving subsidies, but I also want you to tell me something which I'm not an exporter, I want to understand. So the question might sound a bit, oh my God, this woman doesn't even understand this much. I'm purposely asking you, I don't understand. I want you to tell me.
Yes, ma'am.
If the intention is to promote greater exports, in a normal circumstance, give incentive, give more and more incentive makes sense. From your side, that is.
Yes, ma'am.
But now when it is globally recognized that there is a recession in those geographical jurisdictions which normally are our markets, from where emanates the demand for India's goods. How do you subsidize here for an absence of demand there? The absence of demand is not on the price element. There's just no demand. And there's no demand not within India. There's no demand for your goods outside. So how do I incentivize here by giving more and more subsidy? Are you going to sell it for free? No. So tell me what is in your mind when you tell me, in order to promote exports, support us. Yes, we want to support you, but there's no demand there. And there are no more newer markets which are not affected by recession. Please explain this to me a bit.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, we are looking at only the traditional markets. That's US and Europe. Probably the demand is not in those countries. That's what we are also sensing, because our European buyers have stopped the consignment in India for whatever they had ordered to us, because they don't have place to even keep their inventories. But ma'am, we are not looking at the markets such as Africa, CIS, and the Southeast Asia, where the demand still exists. In fact, the rupee payment mechanism that government of India is running, we should focus on those countries, because those countries have foreign exchange problem.
Wasn't the Federation of Indian Export Organizations?
Sorry, ma'am?
Don't you represent the FIEO?
Yes, ma'am.
Wasn't the FIEO tracking the newer markets of Africa, Latin America, and X and Y and so on, even the last 10 years? Wouldn't you tell me, therefore, what's been your experience? Why are you not able to crack them? Leave aside now, even earlier. I know some parts of Africa, there is a problem about foreign exchange. They don't have global currencies any longer, so they're not able to pay, and we have a different problem of sorts. Our lines of credit are also not taking off. But tell me, these are not markets which you didn't access earlier.
We have been doing that, ma'am.
Yes. So, but let me understand this.
Yes, ma'am. But the important markets that the exporters were focusing, as I told you, is the traditional baskets of US and Europe. Those markets have been facilitated, ma'am, but a lot of support still needs to come from the Commerce Ministry to us. And we are sure we will do that, sir.
From Government of India to us.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Our next speaker, Mr. Anant Goenka.
Just one clarification, this issue, ma'am, which was raised by Mr. Kapadia on the Section 9 conditions, some of them being onerous. I think the one condition which is being mentioned is about the 5% limit on the funds of residents. So, well, this particular section, Section 9A, has been brought in specifically for foreign funds, funds by non-residents. And so if we exclude, this particular condition, then we'll in fact, there can be, cases for round tripping. So that's, our concern. And that's why, we don't want to actually remove this condition, because this is essentially for foreigners.
Mr. Anant Goenka, co-chair of FICCI Maharashtra State Council.
Nirmala ji, I'm going to take one step. Congratulations on a very good budget. I add to all the line of compliments you've been getting. I think it's really one of the better budgets we've seen, in all these years. A lot has been said about MSME, so I won't go there. But on green, you're in Mumbai. This last month, we've had 2 days where Mumbai has been the most polluted city in the world. You've said a lot about green. What realistically can we do to help and try to convince industry to adopt more renewable energy in their manufacturing? First question. Second question was around anything you'd like to say on disinvestment. That was one thing that we thought we haven't heard much about. And the last question might not be related to the budget, but is there, what would your message be to the RBI and the MPC now? Given that foreign...
Just 1 minute, huh? If you permit me, because Anant is a friend and after all we've had kind of exchange. He represents a very powerful pillar of the democracy, so it doesn't matter if we have a little, banter with him. Where did I start? No, sorry. You spoke about disinvestment, then you also spoke about green. And you came on to something which provoked me to say this.
The MPC, your message to the RBI and MPC, given that globally we're seeing some hints of tapering of interest rate hikes.
None of you all asked me that. It takes a journalist and a businessman to do it.
I hope it's a compliment.
Yeah, it is. And I will answer it also. Don't worry. I will answer it also, but I thought I should. It's not in the minds of the businesses. It's more in the minds of the journalists. Please go on.
That's all I have to say. That's all.
The concern that you've expressed about green, I fully appreciate it. There was a time when we thought very landlocked kind of cities and towns are the ones which suffer from very severe air pollution and so on. I take the example of Delhi, which is unfortunately severely affected. And also very many solutions are being discussed. But we've not seen considerable progress. And there was also this feeling from people like me who come from states which have coastlines, and therefore Mumbai, that the sea does the good cleaning job for us every day. So by the evening you get fresh air and so on. But this time Mumbai has suffered, despite the sea and so on. So I think to answer the question, the budget does speak about it. It's not just speaking about greening ourselves. It's not speaking about transitioning into from fossil fuel to renewable. It's also talking about waste management. How you treat your liquid wastage. How do you really get to the stages of cleaning that up so that that doesn't add to pollution of a different sort, but yet pollution. Dry waste, humongous waste in metropolitan cities where our population is such that there's a disproportionate planning for managing dry waste also. You end up having huge piles of dumps, which themselves generate certain gaseous air, which affect us. So urban planning, and I must, give a word of compliment also for the ministry. When it comes to the question of state borrowing limits, on which the center has a right to broadly direct it, borrowing has been, to a minuscule extent, linked with performance in reform, inclusive of urban planning, waste management, and so on, so many other components. Some states are very good in responding, saying, this is an opportunity for us to clean up and give better air, give a better environment, and so on. But many others don't respond. I don't attribute any malafide, but sometimes they're rather slow in responding to it. They think it's big burden on them. We are not allowing them to freely borrow and so on. But these are ways in which we are trying to incentivize both treatment of waste, better urban planning, and also making sure that effluent treatment plants are encouraged. Even if they are common effluent treatment plants, please do it. But do it because they bring a big difference. And I can tell you with my personal experience, as Commerce Minister, I had taken a bit of an initiative, not so much it was my terrain at that time, but because people accessed me and I was speaking to Niti Aayog. You would have heard of a town called Erode, which also comes in the same belt which produces textile, floor mats, upholstery, and so on. And they also were deeply into dyeing of clothes. And that area has a beautiful river called Bhavani. Bhavani river's water used to be like crystal, sweet crystal, very sweet. I remember my childhood, Bhavani water used to be, you can see it clean. And if you take it in your hand and drink it, without fear, you can have a good sip of good water. Today, Bhavani, not today, years ago, decades ago, Bhavani was like, the ink that you fill in your pens, that physically you can see tangibly polluted, and of course you don't need to drink it at all. Smell it, you're done for the day. You would have had 400 cigarette smoke. That polluted area, it was purely because of all these dyeing units pouring their effluents into the river saying it'll go away. But I was happy the industries there together came up and said, we want to have a updated, they had some effluent treatment plants, but they came together, and luckily at that time we were very quickly able to ramp up some funds and give them something like 250 crores or something. Don't pin me down on this number, but approximately something of that kind. Today I'm glad to say the same industry set of cluster people come and telling me water relief. It supplies usable water to their households after this. And the third level of recycled water is what actually goes very far away somewhere to be disposed of. The city feels very happy because it now has more water for gardening, cleaning, and other things, without the river being affected so badly. And the river has actually revived itself post this. There are so many things which you can come up with solutions. The formulations and policies exist. The moment you come together and say, look, we think this will make a difference, we are here to come and help you. So I would, suggest, Anant, given your position as a leader of business and media, you should mobilize Mumbaikars, and I'm saying this with my Deputy Chief Minister here, former Chief Minister of Maharashtra here, and I'm sure we'll seek their cooperation as well. You mobilize and form clusters for waste treatment. I'm sure the state government will be quite happy to formulate and forward it to the center. And although I'm not from Maharashtra, I respect the state for very many things, inclusive of its literature, language, the dedication it has for music, the various fantastic cultural centers. Maharashtra deserves a lot more. And I'm sure Chief Minister, former Chief Minister, Deputy Chief Minister will forward your, clustered requests. And purely because of my admiration for the state, I'm not an MP from here, I'm not a whatever from here. There are stalwarts from this state, I respect all of them. But still, I'll do my little bit to make sure this is moved faster. Mumbai deserves to have better climate. And I'm very happy you asked this question.
Our next speaker is Mr. Nalin Jain.
Sorry, ma'am, just 1 minute. Did I miss out anything else you asked me? I went effusively on Mumbai and... right. Just 1 minute. On disinvestment, we have the Secretary, Deepam here.
I think the disinvestment, as ma'am also clarified, in one of the interviews, that it's actually an ongoing scheme. This is not something which is new. I mean, this is an ongoing policy, and we have several transactions which have to be taken to the logical culmination. And we also have to be mindful of the markets as well as the interest of minority shareholders. So keeping into this, we are going for a calibrated disinvestment strategy and going ahead with all the transactions.
It might help, Tuhin, if you would say those which are in the pipeline and which will find its course. Almost everything which has been approved by the cabinet is in the pipeline.
Yes.
But which are in the forefront, which are sooner to, it might help to give them a picture.
Now, for example, we have, some of the steel companies, like we had NMDC Steel. Now, this is, a brand new plant. It's almost going to be completed. So I think if it is taken out and we have demerged it and we have got expression of interest, so that has started moving forward. In IDBI Bank, we have the expression of interest and we have moved forward and we are doing it with the help of RBI, proceeding ahead with that. We have got Shipping Corporation of India where the demerger process is very advanced stage. Similarly, we have BEML, which is there. There's an HLL Life Care. We also have PDIL, a company which is there. So all of these are, moving towards definite stages. And of course, these are the ongoing transactions which were approved. And as you know that disinvestment is also a complex process, especially when we are handing over the management control. It involves, a deeper scrutiny of the companies by the potential bidders. And then issues like, somewhere the real estate has to be taken out. And also we need also cooperation from the state governments. And that's very important. In one case, for example, in Neelachal Ispat Nigam Limited, we got excellent cooperation from Odisha government, as a result of which, there was a win-win situation. The workers got paid, everyone got paid, the mill was revived, and now it is on the growth path. So that is also very important when states and central can work together to see that those enterprises, they grow faster, post-disinvestment. That is the objective, so that the growth and the employment potential of those enterprises are maximized.
So our next speaker is Mr. Nalin Jain, ED Finance and IT of Skoda Auto Volkswagen India Private Limited.
Good morning, madam. Respected madam, senior government dignitaries, colleagues, friends. Thank you for this opportunity. I really congratulate you for the wonderful budget that has been presented. We are also thankful to the various initiatives that have been taken by the government, whether it is digitalization, tax reforms. GST was one of the biggest reforms, and I can say that it has eased our lives significantly. There were savings for the industry which were passed on to the consumers, creating a development and growth of the industry. Now, automotive industry also is one of the largest multiplier industry, madam. Close to 25% of the manufacturing GDP of the country is contributed by auto ancillaries and its related businesses. It also generates a lot of employment. It generates a lot of investments. We are bringing in a lot of technologies from the global, our parents into India. All of this needs scale, madam. It needs a lot of scale. And we are continuously now developing towards becoming greener and cleaner. We are investing into electrification of our products, etc. If I now compare, let us say, to China or to the US, we are now third largest, which is congratulations to the government and to the entire industry. But we are a far third, madam. We are close to about 3.5 million annually versus US being 15 million, China being 20 million. So there's tremendous potential for and providing safer cars to our Indian consumers. I respect also the North Minister, Mr. Gadkari, who's bringing in more norms into 6 airbags, seat belts, etc. So for all of this, scale is very crucial, madam. Our request is to look at 2 aspects, madam, which is the cess which was introduced for a certain period. This will really, if you look at that, it will really develop the industry. It will definitely grow the revenue for the government. It will provide safer and more affordable cars to the consumers. And with that scale, we will be able to grow the industry and create employment and investments into the country. And the second aspect is on the electrification, madam, that we are also investing heavily into the future, and that needs certain consideration in terms of testing vehicles, testing for the market, etc. So these are the 2 considerations we request you to please look at. Thank you so much.
Next speaker is Ms. Shikha P. Gupta, Director, Tax of Hindustan Unilever Limited, representing Bombay Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Good morning to everybody. And a lot has been spoken about what a wonderful budget has been. But, I must compliment the FM and tell her that what a huge admirer I am of hers. And if it is even possible, it's only growing now that I'm sitting in this session. So I had a question on direct tax, which is to do with Section 194R. Ma'am, this section was introduced last year. And this was to tax perquisites and benefits. Now, this year, an amendment has been made to say that even if the perquisite or benefit is in cash, it will be covered under Section 194R. Now, what does this mean for trading liabilities, such as bad debts, which are written off? So if bad debts are written off, many times it's a unilateral action. And it's simply written off because the receivables are aging in the books and they've been sitting in the creditors' books for a long time. Now, if they've written off, there is obviously a very high probability they are irrecoverable. And there is another section, Section 41(1), where because of the remission of liability, the debtor needs to pay tax on it at some point. Now, the question is, if there is a TDS under Section 194R on this because of this amendment, then it will be a cost to the lender. The lender will have to pay this out of its own pocket. So to that extent, I think a clarification might be needed to say that bad debts are outside the purview of Section 194R. Else it will be a huge burden on many companies that are dealing with small enterprises where typically bad debts can happen. So ma'am, that was first question. My second question is a huge welcome change has come in terms of increasing or creating this JCIT appeal positions and also announcing that 100 such posts will be created. However, we do see that there also needs to be a requirement to put some kind of a time limit for disposal of appeals at the JCIT and CIT appeal level. We do recognize that it's a quasi-judicial function, so it may not be possible to stipulate a very strict limit, but some guidance is important to basically reduce the pendency. So with that and with immense thanks, I would leave you to answer this question. Thank you.
Well, you have a valid question. I mean, this is a valid problem. This has been, it's in our knowledge. We recognize that issue and we will certainly, take action. We'll provide, some relief or some clarification because obviously, if you are yourself writing it off, I mean, how do you recover, the TDS? So there is an issue. We recognize that issue and we will take appropriate action with regard to that. Second issue is with regard to the time limits. We have purposely avoided it. I do not think, setting time limits help. Putting it in the statute only to be flouted, in case we don't provide the wherewithal. And so that's what the finance minister has done in this budget, to provide the wherewithal so that, we don't have to provide limits which our officers are then unable to adhere to.